All right, everyone, it is time. Another 2-round mock draft that we are delivering to you. About a dozen prospect profiles are on the channel. Hopefully, you're watching every single one of them. Many more are on the way. A few third and fourth wave of free agency signings and trades have happened, Hayden. So it's time. We're back in the lab to go not just 1 through 32, but 1 through 64 today.
And not a surprise, 33 through 64 on you, actually well thought out on this episode. And on top of that, I'm probably about 80 players with notes. And I'm getting prepped to release my top 100 soon.
Not even April 1st. And we have been deep into the weeds of this draft class. Okay, just the parameters. Once again, 2 rounds. You and I are going to alternate picks. I'm going to take the odds. You will take the evens. Hopefully, we're on the same page with all of that. You alluded to this, but I'll say the opposite. Round one will go much more smoothly and seamlessly than round two. And we are going to allow trades here. And I think we should definitely dive into a whole bunch of trade scenarios because certain prospects and players are going to fall. And we're going to get a bit strapped when it comes to figuring out which prospect should fit with certain teams. So I'm excited to have those conversations with you.
Yeah, there's no point in doing exactly what consensus is doing a month
Right.
before the draft because we learn about 48 hours before the draft to throw basically everything away.
Yeah, that's my favorite. And we love you commenters. By the way, if you're new around here, hit subscribe, leave a thumbs up. That this is the worst mock draft I've ever seen. Why? Because it's different than what everyone puts out there. And then when the NFL draft rolls around, the reason why it's so great is because it's different than what we all predicted heading into
Yep.
it. So I would say embrace the chaos. And that's what we're going to bring here today. And maybe a little bit of fun on top of it. As always, we're on the PFF mock draft simulator. We're going to start the draft. I have pick number 1, the Tennessee Titans, same as our last. We're going to go with Cam Ward here to me. And what we talked about last time, Hayden, their lack of moves or even being not in on deals mentions with other quarterbacks completely points in this direction. And we just got a note from Adam Schefter earlier today that the Tennessee Titans have scheduled a private interview and a private throwing session with Cam Ward. And they have been even more impressed by Cam Ward during this process. And it would take, quote, an even stronger package to acquire the draft's top selection.
Yeah, I totally agree. This to me matches up with the film as well on Cam Ward. I think that he's worthy of being a first overall pick. You always hear this narrative like, oh, he would be the quarterback 7 in last year's draft. I don't really buy that. He's got like real tools to me. He can win from the pocket. He didn't run around as much, but I do think that he can kind of unleash that as he progresses here. So with Tennessee, most teams that don't have a quarterback look for quarterbacks early. If there is one worthy of the first overall selection, and to me and to many analysts, he's going to be the first overall player on many boards.
Yeah, Brian Callahan effectively benched Will Levis last offseason, and they have not done anything to improve off of Will Levis this offseason. So that tells you everything you need to know. I got Cam Ward on March 1st to be selected as the first quarterback at minus 500 and number one pick at minus 315. I know those aren't
There we
plus
go.
numbers, but I feel like that is just money in the bank right now.
Hmm.
I will say Titans have pick 135 and then all the way down at pick 103. We know this roster has a bunch of needs. And so I do wonder if we keep that in mind with pick 35, if we want them to have a potential trade down to pick up one of those spots between 40 and 90 as well.
Hmm.
Cam Ward in the bank with pick 1. Here you are, the Cleveland Browns at pick 2.
So to me, I don't think that Shador is worthy of this selection. I also kind of am wondering if the Browns think similarly, especially because they have this huge Deshaun Watson contract. Like this team's not going to be ready to compete while this rookie quarterback would be on the window anyways. I see 2 blue chippers. And I'm also, if I'm Andrew Barry, I'm looking to see if there's any potential teams that want to trade up for one of these guys. If nobody's calling, I am leaning towards Travis Hunter just because he paid $40 million to Myles Garrett. I do think they could go with Abdul Carter here, but to me, Travis Hunter is going to help the offense. I know that this regime has been trying and trying and trying to find wide receivers. They kind of hit on Jerry Judy with that trade, but if you look at the investments, it's all been on offense aside from Myles Garrett over the last couple off seasons, and this would be adding to that. Travis Hunter can play some defense for them, but I do think that he would play offense. We heard from Andrew Barry, and
Yeah.
I think that he is worthy as a wide receiver in this draft class of this high of a selection. So if I am not getting phone calls up for this pick, this would be my selection.
I was anticipating heading into this entire process and the NFL Combine for 90% of NFL teams just to strictly say, oh, yeah, Travis Hunter is going to be a cornerback and spotlight at wide receiver every once in a while. Like the deeper we get into this, and again, we still have a month left until the NFL draft, it feels 50-50, if not more so. Like teams kind of want to see what he has to do at wide receiver, and the void of talent that was available in free agency for these teams at the top of the draft to add at that spot, and his movement and everything that he brings to the wide receiver spot without ever really practicing at that
Yep.
position where he was in defensive meetings this entire time. Yeah, I mean, Andrew Barry was the first one to come out and say, oh yeah, I view him as a receiver. I do wonder how much you can impact at corner if they really want him to do that. But again, at receiver, it's Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy. And after that, not very much. The trade down scenario is interesting here. Do you want to bring that up at all?
Yeah, they have a bunch of draft picks already, so that's like the one thing where I think they'll have to be blown away with the trade offer. But there could be another team that wants Shador Sanders here. There could be Abdul Carter teams. There could be Travis Hunter teams. So there's like different directions. So I think there'd be like a wide variety of teams that would be wanting to come up. Daniel Jeremiah also hinted he was like asking the Cowboys to get aggressive. Now that's all the way from 12. So that would be like the Will Anderson trade from a couple years back. And I'm not sure if teams would trade all the way up for a wide receiver cornerback prospect. You already don't see very many wide receivers go second overall, but do you have a list of teams perhaps?
I kind of do think a team would trade up for someone like Travis Hunter because he will be the number one player on many teams' boards. And you
Yes.
can say the same thing about Abdul Carter. Any team that doesn't really need a quarterback probably won't have Cam Ward or Shador Sanders up there. And so it's a pretty easy case to make of, oh, we are trading for the number one player in this draft, and we're not having to trade up to number one overall to do that. Like just viewing this draft class in totality, there are two, I think, conventional top end talents at the top, and it's Travis Hunter and it's Abdul Carter. And there's like a massive cliff if we're not
Yep.
including quarterbacks here. And I think in often cases, you should just like have quarterbacks on a secondary board. If you need one, you can take one. So if that's the case, like top three picks, you're going to have to move up there to get someone like this.
But at the same time, the Browns could also use somebody
Exactly. That's
as
what I
good as
mean.
this.
And if you look even at their picks, the Browns have a ton of selections. Now,
Right.
all of them aren't in the first round or in the second round. They've got pick 2, 33, 67, 94, and 104. Like 5 top 105 selections. And then they have a whole bunch in the sixth round. So I'm not sure from like a number of arrows, a volume of picks standpoint, if they really want to add that more in this draft, but that could definitely help them in future drafts.
Yeah, I think that they're not sold on Shador Sanders. They're going to listen to phone calls. I doubt that teams would go up there, and I think that the Browns could be actually likely to trade back into the first round for a quarterback if they want to kind of like get the blue chipper that you're talking about and then go find the quarterback position. Obviously, like the quarterback's coach is attached to Milrow, and maybe there's a day two guy. They have enough picks to kind of make it work. But I think Travis Hunter over Abdul Carter, just looking, the Browns got enough pressure already last year, just with Myles Garrett and the kind of rotations and the matchups that they'll get. They need help on offense still.
Yeah. And there are connections to Shador Sanders via Pat Shermer, who, has worked with this staff before, but I'm not buying into those as much as I am other connections out there. Okay. So the selection is Travis Hunter at 2. That brings us to number 3 and the New York Giants. We already quoted Daniel Jeremiah once. He's one of the best in the business. Let's do it again. I recently was listening to his podcast with Greg Rosenthal, 40s and Free Agents. And Daniel Jeremiah, after connecting Shador Sanders to the Giants, mentioned that he was told by someone outside of the Giants organization, so just the other 31 teams, that, quote, the Giants had a presence at every single Colorado game this year. They were following Shador Sanders around all season. I believe that this also played a part in Shrine Game activities too. I think he had some Giants cleats on, if I'm not mistaken. I know he didn't take part. So this has not been something that we've done before, but it makes me want to make this selection possibly even more, Hayden, to make this a different exercise of Shador Sanders at pick number 3 to the Giants. I know it's debatable if his talent is worthwhile at that spot, but Jameis Winston is on a $4 million a year contract right now. That is not starting caliber money. That is Andy Dalton money that
Yep.
we are seeing, right? We've also saw them do everything in their power, match all the qualifications for Matthew Stafford in the contract that he wanted, the compensation that the Rams wanted, yet Matthew Stafford, we know, chose to go back to the Rams. They also seemingly and reportedly have the biggest contract out there for Aaron Rodgers. So another domino is going to fall here at the quarterback spot. And while it might feel like plan C to take Shador at number 3 overall, that's where I'm leaning here at this moment.
Yeah, I mean, they have to find somebody. I was reading Jordan Raanan from ESPN, and they said that the offensive line needed to get fixed, so they added some depth in this offseason. They needed to make some upgrades on defense. They did that in free agency, and they have to find a franchise quarterback. That's why they were all in on some of these veterans. But once you get to the Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson tier, it's very hard to make a compelling case that you have a franchise quarterback on the roster. So we do see some teams that get desperate and go with the quarterback, even though they probably shouldn't. I do think the Giants would be at the top of that list. I do think it's possible. It was also of note, though, many of the insiders were saying that Russell Wilson's still connected to the Giants. So it'd just be at least be interesting to go sign Jameis as the quarterback to Russ as I don't know what you would call him, and then still draft Shador Sanders. But I'm currently working under the assumption Aaron Rodgers will be a Steeler. I think Russell Wilson will probably be a Giant still, but the contract with that Jameis Winston got was so little that I'm basically pretending that it doesn't exist at all right now. And I think even if they did sign Russ, they can still be looking at
Right.
Shador Sanders here.
So on the Browns front and how I think that that's different than the Giants one here. To me, like the Browns coaches and front office are going to last for multiple years into the future. And what Albert Breer said on our show and what other insiders have talked about across the league is that team is going to take multiple shots at the quarterback position. I don't think you say you're going to take multiple shots at the quarterback position if you know you're going to take a quarterback at number 2 overall. Like there are other levers you can pull. We talked about it with the Kenny Pickett deal, and then it's maybe trading back into round 1 or taking a round 2 quarterback, and then maybe something with Kirk Cousins or another veteran as we go along here. For the Giants, they've gone all in on a bunch of moves this year that just haven't worked so far. Again, the Stafford deal, the Rodgers deal. And I'm not saying this to say that drafting a rookie quarterback is going to save Brian Daboll and Joe Shane's job. What is going to save their job is winning football games, you know? And Joe Shane even mentioned this in the Ronan article you pointed out that, quote, we're going to look for the best player available that can help us win games in 2025. That's what we're going to do. Guess what does that? More so than drafting Abdul Carter or drafting Travis Hunter is getting a quarterback that elevates your offense. Now, it's debatable that if we think that Shore Sanders is going to do that immediately, but what if John Mara, what if the coaches, and what if the front office think he is? And that makes this, to be honest, an easy selection if the answer is yes.
Yeah, if they have a high grade on Shador Sanders, then yeah, they have the team need. And this would be very easy. I just don't think it's as simple as that because then why else were they in the Rodgers sweepstakes? Why were they going for Stafford if they had a really good grade on Shador Sanders or they thought they had a chance at Cam Ward? So that's where I think it gets a little bit puzzling here. The last thing I did want to reference was back in 2019 when they did take Daniel Jones, and that was considered a reach by pretty much everybody. And I think that this pick would be considered a reach by pretty much everybody. They did so with one pick afterwards, where it was Josh Hines Allen, who's been a monster, signed like a $150 million contract, obviously way more valuable than Daniel Jones. It would just be pretty reminiscent of that, where you would be going to the owner and saying, we're going to reach on this quarterback. And meanwhile, the edge rusher, Abdul Carter, that's available, everyone, like 99 out of 100 people with grades would say that they would rather have Abdul Carter. We're going to be the other team here. Now, obviously, that was with Gettleman, not Shane. But it's like
Right.
the very, very similar
Yeah.
blueprint with Mara that he would have to be like kind of agreeing to do this.
I will add that the edge rushers on that team were Kareem Martin, Lorenzo Carter, and Marcus Golden, and not Brian Burns
Correct.
and Kayvon Thibodeau.
And that's what's fascinating about this is because it's like team needs meet like the actual grade, and you cannot see more lopsided in this where
Well,
Abdul
guess
Carter
what?
is
Team
definitely
needs
better.
are as how people draft.
It matters. And I did look into this. Kayvon Thibodeau does have a tradable contract. They can
Yeah.
they can figure that out later. But that's just fascinating that you have this huge discrepancy between team needs and best player available. And we'll
Right.
see what ends up mattering here.
Yeah, and the 5th-year option for Kayvon Thibodeau doesn't go into effect until I believe like May 1st or something. So even if
So
they
they
do
get right
trade him
after.
over draft weekend,
Yep.
then the other team could potentially pick that up at the same time. Yeah, I mean, if it's Carter or Hunter, there's no easy spot for them to fill in immediately unless it's Travis Hunter at wide receiver, right?
Hmm.
Other than that, like you're going to have to bench someone that you invested a first round pick in, either Deontay Banks or Kayvon Thibodeau. It's really that simple. I know you're going to
Yeah.
rotate your pass rushers, but that's a ton of investment on the edge if you've already done that.
Yeah, with me thinking that could be Travis Hunter at 2, that makes the Giants like even more fascinating as
Correct.
it currently sits.
All right, I will pick Shador Sanders at number 3. Once again, if you made it this far, hopefully you have. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. We're in the journey. Let's say, Hayden, I'm going to plant the flag right now. Ahead of kickoff of the 2025 season, 200,000 subscribers. That's what
Whoa,
we're aiming for.
damn. All righty. Let's try to get to 150 by the draft. Let's start small first.
Gentlemen, I have one question for you. What can happen in 36 months? You could build a new shed in your backyard and put all of your tools away, organized and nicely, or you could knock off about half of your New Year's resolutions. Or, like me, you could pick up a new hobby because I'm going to be golfing all summer long. I mean, I'm going to be on the driving range. I'm going to be looking for golf balls. Now that I think of it, it's going to be a lot of time. And instead, maybe I should start seeing fuller and thicker hair through Hims, which can be achievable in 3 to 6 months. Hims provides you with convenient access to a range of hair loss treatments that work all from the comfort of your couch. It makes treating hair loss simple with doctor trusted options and clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little, once again, as 6 months. The process is simple and 100% online, so there is no uncomfortable, weird doctor visits. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/underdog. That is HIMS.com/underdog for your personalized hair loss treatment options. Hims.com/underdog. Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. All right, pick 4, New England Patriots.
Okay, so this one to me would be easy. This is the dream scenario. They have one thing that they're hoping for: Shedeur Sanders before 3. And if that's the case, you talked about the 2 blue chip talents being available for them. I think that they can go with Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. There is a starting spot for these guys, not just for the long term, but even for this year. I would just be basically sprinting up to the podium for Abdul Carter. I'm sure a lot of teams would be coming to look to trade up for that. But I'm looking at Vrabel, who probably wants to upgrade the edge spot. And I think this would be a pretty easy selection.
Are you open to the phone lines ringing at all? Because if we talk about this Patriots defense, they've already added so many pieces during the offseason. We know they gave a massive contract to Milton Williams. They brought in Harold Landry, who has a history with Mike Vrabel to be honest, pair with Keon White, I think, who can be an emerging player with Mike Vrabel. And then at inside linebacker, you have Robert Spillane. At corner, you have Carlton Davis. That is a very different investment they've already made than the offensive line, which is arguably the biggest weakness on the team. And the 2 players you brought in, Morgan Moses, who's going to start till he's 45 years old at right tackle, but then also Garrett Bradbury, who the Vikings, previously taken in the first round, willingly just let go and said, we can upgrade with you with another injured center. And then that's it. Their left side right now is Vidarian Lowe and Cole Strange. I think Drake May is amazing, but guess what can make his game even better is having clean pockets and clean situations. So if a team is really willing to send a second round pick along with this, and maybe you can still stay in the top 10 and take one of Will Campbell and Armand Mimbo, would you be interested in a trade like that?
Hell yeah, I'm interested. I just think that they're hoping for one of these guys to be available because the asking price will be a lot higher when you do pick up the phone. So there's definitely a lot of teams that can use edge rusher right down the draft. I'm looking at the Jets. I think that they can use one. The Panthers at 8, the Saints at 9. I mean, pretty much everyone needs an edge rusher. So I would be definitely willing to pick up the phone calls because you can go Ted McMillan as well. And there's obviously a bunch of offensive linemen. So I think that the top 8 or so to make sure you get one of those guys would be as far as I would want to go down. But Panthers, that would be kind of piquing my interest here. I know the Jaguars already have edge rushers. The Raiders have edge rushers. So it's 7 and 8 to me are the kind of the sweet spot right here.
Can we pick up the phone with the Carolina Panthers? Like if I am Dan Morgan and Dave Canales, I would want to think heading into the draft. My plan might be, hey, I want to move back and acquire as many picks as possible and build this up because we still have not added very much in the offensive end, and we can, implement some more selections in that department. But to me, their number one priority heading into this offseason was finding a difference maker, finding a either get off the field player on defense or stay on the field player on offense. And while we've liked a lot of the moves that they've made, I can't say they've really added that piece yet, and
No.
you can only really do that in the offseason if you're able to get Milton Williams, who they really tried and they set the bar for that the Patriots then delivered a blank check for, or it was in a potential trade that none of these teams wanted to deal their pass rushers and Max Crosby or Myles Garrett and obviously Micah Parsons with the Dallas Cowboys. And so your next best here, I think, would be trying to make a move from 8 to 4 to get Abdul Carter if he's on the board.
Let's do it. I have not seen this in a mock draft. I think this is entirely plausible. We just saw this with Will Anderson, not quite as far down the draft. I'm looking at the picks that I would take. So I will take your 8th overall pick for the Panthers, the 57th overall pick, and that's just about even in terms of the trade chart. I think a future third, something like that, would be just enough to make this deal worthwhile. Because I think if you are looking at the Patriots, you are saying, I am trading away a blue chip player at 4th overall. So I don't think it's going to be like an
Right.
easy trade. So I think 8, 57, and a late pick or another future pick, I think is probably enough.
Why don't we do this? 8, 57, and 163 for pick 4 and pick 217. So they move up about 50 spots on day 3 with that.
The numbers don't add up, but it'd be close enough. How about 140 instead of 163?
Okay, 140.
There you go.
There you go. There it is. All right. So 77 spots. Yeah,
It matters.
This would leave the Panthers with no picks in round 1 and round 2 after this Abdul Carter trade. But this
Abdul
is the
Carter.
type of move to me that sets the difference. And I guarantee you, Eric Eager and company will have this scenario in mind of, okay, we think that Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are the top 2 names in the draft. But if there's a chance that we can move up and get one of those, even if our preference, if we stay at number 8, is to move back, I think you got to make the move.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Will Anderson trade. They got a future first too, so this
Right.
still might not be enough of a trade package, but close enough.
There it is. All right. So with the 4th pick, the Carolina Panthers select Abdul Carter. Just to talk through that would make their defensive line Derek Brown, Tershawn Wharton, Ashawn Robinson, Bobby Brown, and Shai Tuttle on the interior. Then Jadeveon Clowney, DJ Wanham, and Abdul Carter on the edge with one of the highest paid corners and JC Horn and one of the highest paid safeties in Trevon Moehrig in the back half. Like, that gives you an identity on your defense.
Yep. That goes from 32 to league average and hopefully higher than that.
And somehow the Panthers offense has not improved at all in an entire
It's
offseason.
early. It's early.
But maybe they can figure something out moving forward. Deontay Johnson's still drifting away somewhere out there too.
Sure.
All right. Jacksonville Jaguars are up at pick number 5. And I guess this is my selection, even though I kind of overpowered you on the last one. Sorry about that. James Gladstone, I already love him, man. Do you know why? Because he's getting the mic, and I think he's kind of revealing what their plans might be in general terms. After a question from Mia O'Brien, who I think does great work around the Duval County, James Gladstone basically said that the team will spend multiple draft picks along the defensive line. He said that by using these words, quote, "If you add a veteran at this point, you could just be standing in their way. We're going to allow these rookies to get a chance to get out on the field and help us this coming fall." James Gladstone just saw this with the LA Rams when you draft an edge rusher to pair him with an interior player in Braden Fisk. And I think a Braden Fisk, Mason Graham connection might be made with a few of these teams as well. So that's the selection I'm going to go with here at number 5 overall. And that is interior pass rusher Mason Graham out of Michigan.
Yeah, it's my number 1 team need for Jacksonville. This is going to be the range that he goes with. He's not a consensus top 5 player, but there's nobody that's an obvious fit right here. And he did enough. He's tiny, and that's what makes him so interesting. But Fisk is a great comp for him, and obviously the connection that you just made makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at what their depth chart is right now, they, like you've talked about, they have loaded up on the edge with Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen. And the interior, it's Devon Hamilton and Mason Smith, who really did nothing last year, and Eric Armstead, who did very little once coming over from the San Francisco 49ers, who was kind of positionless, let's say, for them last year. So I know we haven't seen athletic testing for Mason Graham. I don't know if we will get athletic testing for Mason Graham. To me, it's very important here. But the production and pass rush mentality, I think, fits of what this team has looked out for, because the other position that James Gladstone brought up was offensive line, and they went out and signed Robert Hansey and Patrick McCarry on top
Yep.
of that. So I think that they invested there while leaving an opening here on the defensive trenches. All right, pick 6, Las Vegas Raiders.
This one's fascinating. I see opportunities at guard, wide receiver, and running back and corner, and there's guys available here. So I don't have a very clean read on this situation. I go back to the Athletic article where they were talking about they need an X wide receiver. I see one at the top of the queue right here. I also see Ashton Genty being a 1,500 yard rusher in the Chip Kelly offense if they can get the offensive line
I'll
going.
take the higher.
Yeah, right. So it sounds like, and this is not my opinion, I'm going to have Ted above Ashton Genty, but it seems like the league-wide opinion is that Genty's going to go ahead of McMillan. You guys can watch our McMillan video. We seem pretty optimistic on him, but let's go with the chalk here and go Ashton Genty. Just looking at the Chip Kelly fit, it would obviously be fantastic. Geno Smith under center, play action. I think that would help them out. They're going to need to find some wide receivers to throw the ball to downfield. I think that's going to be a potential problem if they do that. But the more I was watching the wide receivers that are going to be available in round 2 and 3, the more optimistic I became. I went into the draft process thinking the wide receivers were not going to be very good. And maybe they don't have like the top end guys we saw the last couple of years in the top 10 picks. But the day 2 picks, like to me, look like every other day 2 pick class that we've seen. And I think that they can go Genty plus Jaden Higgins or somebody like that.
That'd be sweet round. At pick 37.
Yeah.
We'll get there, and we'll get there in this mock if 3 hours after this. But yeah, pick 37 for Jaden Higgins to pair him with Ashton Genty would be a really fun unit for Geno Smith to walk into. Yeah, the line I keep coming back to with Chip Kelly is in his 4 years with the Philadelphia Eagles, his rushing attempts on offense per game were 4th, 7th, 11th, and 5th across the league. Now, those offenses range from 4th to 3rd to 27th his last year, but it shows you, even if he's one of the best offenses or one of the worst offenses, he's going to run the daggone football, you know? And Ashton Genty in a draft class like this makes a ton of sense as a top 6 selection.
Yeah, and the depth chart in Las Vegas at running back is
it's so
bad as it gets. It's as truly as bad as it gets.
Now, there are a bunch of backs. Again, we have plenty of prospect profile videos on the channel. And if you're waiting for a Genty one or a Caleb Johnson one, the reason we haven't posted those yet is because we wait for athletic testing for these guys to have an opportunity to do that before posting the video. So they are on the way. Don't worry. Okay, you're taking Ashton Genty at number 6, the Raiders. That brings me to the New York Jets at pick number 7. I always defer to Connor Rogers here, friend of the program, in many of these instances to the Jets. There are 3 main needs for New York gangrene right now. Right tackle, wide receiver 2, and tight end. And if I give them one of those, then we'll get comments from Jets Nation being like, why didn't you pick this other position?
Right.
You only have 1 first-round pick to fill all these spots, right? The one that Connor keeps going back to, and I don't know if you're going to love this, is Tyler Warren. And I think part of it is he can be that end of the line tight end for you in a Ben Johnson-esque offense that Tanner Engstrand is bringing to the table here. But that versatile tight end type that can both be, your 6th offensive lineman, that can be your split guy in the slot, that can also be as an isolated outside wide receiver that we've seen Sam Laporta be. I'm not necessarily comparing the athlete that Sam Laporta is to Tyler Warren, but because we just don't know. We don't have that athletic testing. But the versatility that I think he brings to the table, and like just the Houdini-like catches that he brings out there and the plays that he makes, plus I wouldn't be surprised if they do some really cool wildcat shit with him, because I really think that Tyler Warren might score 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns once he enters the NFL during his rookie year. I like this addition for the Jets.
Yeah, this would be too early for me, but I understand the process. Their tight end depth chart is definitely lacking, and a lot of people have Tyler Warren as a consensus top 10 guy. So I can definitely see this. I think that Armand Membu at right tackle would be a beautiful pick, as you were alluding to. Edge rusher, I think, is a need on top of that. So yeah, they're in a good part of the draft to go best player available, and for a lot of people, that is Warren.
Okay, that's where we're going to go, and that brings us to the New England Patriots. I mean, this is a perfect plan for them, is it not? You add pick 57, here you are at pick 8, and no offensive linemen have been selected already. Plus a wide receiver if you want to go in that direction.
Yeah, definitely so. So yeah, this is why the Patriots should be looking to trade down, and I think the only way that they will be able to do that is if Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter is available. So this is where it gets difficult. I think I'm going to go with Will Campbell. I'm going to assume
Yeah.
that Morgan Moses, the right tackle, is going to stay at right tackle, and that Armand Membu, most teams are going to view him as a right tackle because that's where he played. Will Campbell could try to play tackle, just because they don't have a good left tackle right now. And if he fails, guess what? He can be a guard, and that's worked totally fine with the Tennessee Titans, with Peter Skoronsky. And I think that Will Campbell could be a good addition here. Will Campbell, the guard at fourth overall, is pretty tough, but Will Campbell, the left tackle, maybe transition to guard after trading down. I do think that is totally justifiable here. So, you like we just said, like Tet would be a good pick here. Membu would be a good pick here. Will Campbell would be a good pick here. So I do think trading down for them does make a ton of sense.
Mike Vrabel's last year in Tennessee, they took Peter Skronsky 11th overall, and they only viewed him as a guard out of the
Mhm.
gate. I actually think the NFL might like Will Campbell a bit more than like draft Twitter likes him. And yeah, we focus in on wingspan, obviously more than arm length, because arm length can be very much variable depending, and wingspan is the entire measurement. He started as a freaking freshman at
Yeah.
LSU, at left tackle. He's been on these teams' radar for a very, very long time. And start him at tackle. If it works, fantastic. If it doesn't, guess what? You also need a starting left guard. It's really that simple to me.
Yeah. I think he's one of the highest floor players in the draft, and
And
that's
guards
saying
are getting
something
paid
here.
a
A
shit ton
ton.
of money right now.
A ton. And by the way, Drake May would love a guard at fourth overall. He
Yeah,
doesn't give a shit.
he might need a guard more than a tackle. Who
For
knows?
sure.
He needs both. All right, Will Campbell, the pick is at number 8. Okay, question. What if they view Mimbu as just like the much better talent? Would you be cool with taking them here?
Hell yeah. Membu is my fourth overall player in this draft class. So whether they take him at 4 or at 8, we've seen some players go from right side to left side, like Tristan Wirfs just did that. It's just rarer to see that happen. So yeah, I would still love it.
All right, Will Campbell is the pick. And here we go at pick number 9, the New Orleans Saints. I haven't called our buddy Nick Underhill in a while. Again, I think that they're like a low key intriguing team for Ashton Genty. Um, he's not on the board here, so this makes my selection a bit more difficult. The Saints, I thought that they were going in a different direction than we had seen them previously in terms of firing Dennis Allen, sending away Marshawn Lattimore, and they might have reset a little bit. That turned out to not be the case, because when you bring back Brandon Cooks, you're going to do exactly what you have done. Uh,
Yep.
Now, they did give, like Justin Reed some guaranteed money heading into year 2. We know they brought back Chase Young on a huge deal, a big contract. So, man, I'm looking at this, and really most of, I think, the starting spots are basically full along the depth chart, except for left guard. Like, left guard is really bad, and it's Nick Saldiveri. And with Will Campbell already off the board, I'm not sure really in which direction they go here, other than maybe trying to continue to upgrade this wide receiver room and going with Ted McMillan, or at cornerback and going with Jahdae Barron or Will Johnson. Those are my 2 leans right now. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that Will Johnson's going to grade out the highest of them. And I mentioned the fit, I believe, on a previous episode between Brandon Staley, lots of cover 4 quarters, zone coverage. That's where Will Johnson is best at, and his instincts and his length show up there. So I think in terms of scheme fit, it makes a lot of sense. It would be immediately resetting with the Marshawn Lattimore trade. I do think that they
Right.
have a theoretical starting outside corners, but they can definitely upgrade one of the spots, in my opinion. So I think that Will Johnson would make a lot of sense. He's a very inconsistent player to date, but at
Right.
one point he was like a top 5 guy.
Right. Okay. We're going to go with Will Johnson here to the Saints at number 9. And yeah, Isaac Yadam is technically the starting corner on paper now. NFL Draft with Josh and Hayden is sponsored by BetterHelp. Think about your favorite people in life. Think about the ones that helped you get where you are. Leaders, mentors, idols. They don't all have the answers, but they do know when to ask questions or seek support from their community. I was just at a wedding this past weekend. It's always amazing when you're at these events, very joyous, with many people that are around the same age as you. and going through similar life lessons, life moments, responsibilities, twists and turns, and the conversations you get to during that time and how it makes you feel afterwards when maybe you share a bit too much or someone does the same to you and you help them talk through it. In many cases, you feel a bit more fulfilled that you know the direction you want to go in after that, or you just know that someone else is going through similar things as you. And if you are looking to do the same, therapy can be an avenue for that. BetterHelp is fully online. It makes therapy affordable and convenient, and it serves over 5 million people worldwide. There's access to our diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/ffpod today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ffpod. All right, pick 10, Chicago Bears. What direction do they go in?
Well, this is a pretty tough spot for them. First of all, the Bears don't have like a lot of like glaring needs. I think that they want
Smart.
Ashton Genty, right? They figured out most of the offensive line. I think theoretically they can try to find a left tackle with Braxton Jones coming off of injury, but they've made a lot of upgrades and their defense is pretty much set. I do wonder if they can trade down and
Ooh.
try to find some draft picks. The guys that to me like at the very top here, I think Membu makes a lot of sense. I have Colston Loveland inside my personal top 10. I wonder if there's a team that would come up for him, perhaps. There's a bunch of defensive linemen, but that's not necessarily what the Bears need. So maybe like Colston Loveland would be somebody I would be thinking could be the apple of somebody's eye.
Yeah, I mean, because of his injury, Colson Loveland hasn't been able to participate in anything this offseason. Yet, to me, when I watch him, I think his movement at 6'5", near 250 is literally unbelievable.
Yeah.
And how he can change your passing attack. And if I'm looking down, what at pick 14 is the Indianapolis Colts, whose starting tight ends right now are Drew Ogletree, Jelani Woods, and Will Mallory and Albert O. And this is a team that was also linked with Brock Bowers during last year's draft
True.
at the same exact time. We know that Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard need to win in order to save their jobs. They've tried now with two quarterbacks, and that's how they're going to roll at that department. And, with adding Cam Bynum and Charvarius Ward in their secondary, and while they lack an edge rusher, I do wonder if they're like, hey, we haven't made really any pass catching investments, and especially at tight end where we might have the worst position group in the NFL. If Colson Loveland, who I think some teams are going to view as a top 10 talent, might be worth it.
Yeah, let's do it. I think it makes sense. My comps for Colson Loveland, I like don't even want to admit what they are because they're so high, highly
He's
regarded.
nasty.
He's nasty. So yeah, let's make it. This would be trading down 4 spots. They get a third pick in the draft, and that pretty much makes the trade chart happy.
Okay, so pick 10 for pick 14, and is it
And
pick 80?
Pick 80.
All right, there it is. So that buys a little bit of time for the Chicago Bears, and that brings you back to the Indianapolis Colts, where you are going to take tight end Colston Loveland out of Michigan. I can't wait to do this video with him. You and I never exchange notes. There might be some unreasonable things said about this, but we will table that until later on. But make sure you're all subscribed in order to find it. All right. That brings us to pick 11 for the San Francisco 49ers. And while it might not have been a great spot for the Chicago Bears at pick 10, Armand Mimbu still being there at pick number 11 to play right tackle. I mean, pairing him
Oh my God.
with Trent Williams on the opposite side, like I had all these things written down for the 49ers and believing that like they might need to reach on certain players. Like they really don't have enough starting defensive tackles right now. We know they drafted Javon Kinlaw. They paid big for Javon Hargrave. Neither of those players really panned out to a huge degree. Robert Saleh's back as defensive coordinator. Kenneth Grant, I think, would make a lot of sense for them there too. I was thinking on the edge, if you want to add a running mate for Nick Bosa long term, Shamar Stewart or Michael Williams is two potential players there too. But man, oh man, you just drafted Dominic Pooney last year. You saw how much that can help you on the interior. Trent Williams is not getting any younger, despite still being the best left tackle in the league. So why not just like add Armand Membu to the right side and we'll run the races?
Yeah, this would be so nasty. And it makes sense in the same offseason you're going to extend Purdy. You draft another offensive lineman, makes total sense.
And if you're doing like a pure drop back game, Now with Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, whenever Brandon Ayuk gets back, give him a
Mhm.
bit more protection, 5, 7-step drops and downfield work where there were parts of last season where Brock Purdy was attacking down the field more than most quarterbacks out there.
Mhm.
So that's it. All right. Pick 12, Dallas Cowboys. Back to you.
So this to me is like Tet's falling, Jalen Walker is falling. I think Tet is the way more obvious need for them. Jalen Walker might be a little bit higher on boards. Their edge rushers, obviously, they have Micah Parsons. Dante Fowler was just brought in. They have second rounder from last year, Marshawn Nealand. So they have some bodies at edge rusher already. So let's go with Tet McMillan here. Big
Ooh.
X receiver. I think that this just makes a lot of sense in terms of styles with CD Lamb moving around. We talked about in our video with Tet that we want Tet to also be moved around. But guess what? These guys can move around all day long because there's only two of them. They don't have a really good tight end. They don't have a really good running back. They don't have a really good wide receiver 3 in this scenario. So I think that just like 6'5" guy with slot plus and CD Lamb, like this is like the duo that I think would be like a big splash for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, and Trevon Diggs' injury is not great at corner, so I could see them looking at Jahdae Barron at the
Yes.
same time. They have a bunch of stuff. They struggle to stop the run, and they haven't really added any of that when Mozzie Smith is out there too. But running back is still a big need, and after totally missing out on that position last year, it certainly just doesn't sound like, even if you dig into national reporters, maybe even some local, that they're going first round running back.
Right.
But Tet at number 12. I really, really like this selection. It almost threads the needle of where maybe some on the outside viewed him and then where big draft kind of views him around,
Mhm.
I don't know, pick 18, pick 20, pick 22. In that range, pick 12 is kind of again, right in the middle.
I think it's a really good fit with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott's
Yeah,
shown over the years being willing to throw it up, back shoulder fades, big crossing routes. And I think that's
totally.
kind of where Ted's at his best.
Now we're on to pick 13. That is the Miami Dolphins. To me, the Dolphins do not have a season if their quarterback gets injured. You also don't have a running game if you don't add to your offensive line. And what have the Miami Dolphins done during free agency? Because they were strapped for money. They brought in James Daniels, who I really like, but he's coming off an Achilles tear, and they're going to lean on him to be a starter. And the future of Teron Armstead is more than cloudy, unless it's clear and he's just retiring, and that could be the case, which certainly
Pretty
sounds
much
like he
is.
is. Yes. So again, on the offensive line, you don't have players. You do not have a left tackle. Now, this draft isn't loaded with left tackle spots, but Kelvin Banks, we have talked about. Donovan Jackson, I think, filled in, obviously, at left tackle. And then maybe the most intriguing name is Josh Simmons, who was the left tackle for Ohio State, but he's also coming off of an injury. Those are kind of the directions I want to go.
Yep.
But again, trench talent overall, I think, is a bit barren for this team because interior defensive line is another spot too.
Definitely. So I think Derek Harmon makes a lot of sense. The defensive tackle, more of a 3 tech, kind of replace what they had with Christian Wilkins. Kenneth Grant would just be
Kenneth Grant, I think, is a great select. You know what? I think I'm going to side with Kenneth Grant here.
okay.
I know he didn't completely wow with his athletic testing. Let's also keep in mind that he is a massive human being at around 340-ish pounds. But when you look at the Miami Dolphins depth chart at defensive tackle, and on the interior, let's say, Zach Sealer is one of the most underrated players across the league. But outside of that, it's Matt Dickerson, Benito Jones, and Neil Farrell. And
Mhm.
with this style of defense, with Anthony Weaver, it's, hey, we need an interior pass rusher. Let's get up the field. Let's clog that pocket. And I think Kenneth Grant is a name to watch here.
Yeah, I think that he has a chance to be one of the most productive pass rushing nose tackles. Like not 3 tech, like get him right in the A gap. And I actually think that he will have some sack production, some TFLs. Like he can really move for a big fella.
Then we got to rely on, picks 48, 98 to rework this Dolphins offensive line. But
They
one lever to
funded it
pull
off
at a time.
before.
One lever at a time. All right, you're back here with the Chicago Bears at 14.
Okay. So it's kind of the same thing where they didn't really need a defensive tackle. They didn't necessarily need a wide receiver, and those are the picks that they've kind of gone away with. The tight end also. So we're kind of in a very similar situation. I'm looking at best player available. I do wonder if they just start looking at Jalen Walker, Mike Green, these guys I think are going to go really high in the draft. They're very similar styled players. Mike Green, I thought maybe he was going to slide, and then he runs at his pro day a 96 percentile three cone. Why is that important? Well,
Yeah.
he's not very long. We know that he's fast. We know he's productive, but now he's like we got to confirm like he is a very very strong in the bend department to verified. I think that Jalen Walker very similar in the explosiveness as well. So I think both of these guys I think are top 15 guys, if not going into the top 10. So I know they have Montez Sweat. They just made a big acquisition in Dio as well. But these teams could always be looking for an edge three or an upgrade beyond that. So that's kind of where I would be leaning towards. I think I would go with Jalen Walker just because he can play some snaps at off ball linebacker. So this would be an interesting selection for them. Doesn't really make a lot of sense necessarily based off their depth chart, but I wanted to reiterate the Bears depth chart, it doesn't have like a lot of like glaring needs here. So this could just be like a best player available draft for them if they don't get Ashley
Yeah.
Genty to fall.
I mean, Jalen Walker's a lot of fun. It's an interesting piece for someone like Dennis Allen to utilize, because we've seen off-ball linebacker snaps, and then some people just totally love edge snaps, and that's where you should be at full time. We know they have Montez Sweat. They had a pretty decent deal, and I'll look this up for what Deo Adingbo got in free agency just to find how much. Yeah, it's really a 2-year deal that he got. So again, this is a player that you need to get off the field in terms of offenses on third downs, on second and longs, and having him not as a part-time player, but as kind of like that trio
Mm-hmm.
to force defenses along with Grady Jarrett at the interior, I think is a really, really fun grouping.
Yeah, definitely so. And he's also so young and he's so inexperienced at this
Yeah.
position that it would not be surprised if like fourth and fifth year Jalen Walker looks a lot different, and that having Dio Digbo there does make a lot of sense to kind of like get him through the first couple seasons. So he's just not falling much further than this if he even gets here.
Yep. All right. Atlanta Falcons might be a bit concerned that Jalen Walker just went off the board. So here they are at pick number 15. I mean, the Falcons simply need pass rush help. And what they got
Yes.
this offseason was Morgan Fox and a 1-year contract for Leonard Floyd. The brain trust, and by that I mean the coaching staff for the Falcons, came from the Rams. They just left Los Angeles. And then just when they left Los Angeles, that's when they invested so much on the defensive line. We've already talked about it, defensive rookie of the year, and then his running mate and teammate in Braden Fisk just attacking relentlessly. And like the Rams wouldn't have been as good as they were last year if they didn't have that youthful pass rushing group up front as well. So if we're looking at that, I think, to be honest, Michael Williams is a really interesting name to me. This year, asked to play a whole bunch of 4-eye stuff, almost read and then react rather than just react off the ball. If you go and look at him during his freshman year, there's that rep that everyone loves to throw around against Paris Johnson Jr. that he walked him back to the quarterback. I think he's still less than 21
He's
years
young.
old, just 20
Yes.
years. Yeah, 20.7 right now. It wouldn't shock me at all if the NFL, when looking at like a size, speed group, likes Michael Williams more than they do someone like Mike Green or Ezra Raku.
Yeah, I think all those guys are the smaller, like Abdul Carter, Walker, Green. Those are like the small edge rushers. James Pierce as well into that, and then Michael Williams is kind of his own beast, and I guess Shamar Stewart as well, where those guys actually have some size. Michael Williams is like ready made for run defense, and he has at least some pass rush ceiling, really long arms, some burst, nothing too crazy there. So this is the range that he kind of belongs in. I think that the Marshall edge rusher and Mike Green, Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart, all these guys make a lot of sense for the Falcons.
All right, we're going to give them Michael Williams, and that brings you to the Arizona Cardinals at pick number 16.
Yeah, it's a lot of the same positions for like this kind of in the middle of the teens. It's gonna be a lot of edge rushers and defensive tackles. The Arizona Cardinals were in the Milton Williams sweepstakes. They did not get that. I think Derek Harmon would be a very, very good consolation prize uh, for them, the defensive tackle out of Oregon. So he can play 3 tech. They can move around the formation. I think he's good enough for the 4-high stuff, the 4-eye stuff that you were just talking about. I think he has a lot of pass rush juice. This is a guy that has great character. So I think this guy's going to go really high in the draft. I think that a lot of people are kind of mocking him in the late 20s and maybe even the 30s. I see him more into the teens, and we just saw the
Wow.
Arizona Cardinals try to find this specific player in free agency. They struck out. They got a nose tackle in Dalvin Tomlinson. They got an edge rusher in Josh Sweat. You need somebody to play in between them, and that would be Derek Harmon.
So do you think enter the defensive line where they added Dalvin Tomlinson and obviously Josh Sweat, like you just talked about on the outside, that is more important than finding an outside corner to replace someone like Sean Murphy Bunting?
Yeah, the outside corner would be Jedi Barron, who's really like doesn't have the length of an outside corner. So I do think the three tech is very high on the radar. I don't think that Sweat and Tomlinson, even though Stevens a lineman, it's not exactly pinpointing this exact position.
We'll go with Derek Harmon for you. And that brings me to pick 17, the Fighting Joe Goodberries, the Cincinnati Bengals. I'll make this one super quick. I'm going to go with Malachi Starks at safety.
Wow.
Um, I understand that his athletic testing wasn't as good as Mori coming out of South Carolina, but what you do get with Malachi Starks is top GPS numbers on every single drill. And literally any draft insider that you read about coming out of the combine said teams didn't just like Malachi Starks. They absolutely loved Malachi Starks when it came to his interviews, when it came to the one-on-one interactions they had with him. And for me, this fixes what you lost in Jesse Bates. When this team got to the AFC Championship, when it got to the Super Bowl, when Jesse Bates was roaming that middle of the field, this defines some of your defensive pieces that you've spent that kind of were hybrids or versatile, if you want to use that in quotes. And again, it defines some of those guys. So it makes everything, the picture a bit more clear for Al Golden and his defense. I'm going to give them Malachi Starks here.
I can definitely see it. This would be way too early for my evaluation, but who cares about my evaluation in a mock draft? This is where a lot of people have Starks going, and this is like a position where it's so based off of your instincts and feel. And he obviously has so much experience, like 3 years with Kirby Smart. Like you've seen it all truly. So yeah, he's gonna make up for like the very average athletic tools with his experience.
Now, I could also see them going with, a left tackle, continuing that trend, and Josh Simmons ranks up there, Kelvin Banks, obviously, but we're going to go with Malachi Starks for the
All right.
Bengals. That brings you to pick 18 and the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay. I really like tight ends for them. They're both gone. I definitely like interior linemen. And this is kind of when you can start looking at some guys that would look at guard. So
Yep.
let's go over to tackle and Kelvin Banks, but some teams are going to view him as a potential guard. I think that he has the movement skills to run this wide zone uh, offense that Clint Kubiak is bringing over. He can play left tackle as a backup, and they've had some tackle injuries over the years. But I think that some teams are going to view him as a guard. I think he'd be the best one available for them. I know that Booker and Donovan Jackson are available. I don't think that Booker is going to be fast enough for this scheme. I don't think that Donovan Jackson is going to be ranked high enough either. The other option would be his teammate in Matthew Golden, who's the exact opposite wide receiver of JSN and Cooper Kupp if they want to treat MVS as a number 4. But I think the interior offensive line is more important. And I would just put Kelvin Banks at left guard, and that's a transition, but we see a lot of tackles go play guard.
Yeah, I mean, for a team and a GM that reflected on his past and said, yeah, we haven't invested enough early draft capital or money on interior offensive line. And then when they could have paid, and I know money was tighter last offseason, Damian Lewis, they didn't. And he got paid like what, $14.5 million, which now looks like a steal in comparison to all these guard contracts, because they tried to pay Will Fries more. And then Tevin Jenkins, I think, went in for a visit and they didn't sign him. They literally didn't improve the interior offensive line at all. Like they brought in Josh Jones. That's
Not
it,
enough.
along their entire offensive line group. Something has to improve. Something has to get better. And this is, I think, a key spot for it. And John Schneider, doesn't care where you went to school, doesn't care about other people's boards. So while you might say Kelvin Banks, I could also see them go after someone like Gray Zabel, from North Dakota State at the same time. So we'll give them Kevin Banks in this exercise, and I might mock them Gray Zabel in the future.
Yeah, I think Zabel, I had him with the Texans previously. I do think like the 18 to the Texans is kind of like all of a sudden his draft range.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Yeah, so this team has tried first and second round at edge rushers, and it has worked and it hasn't. They did bring in Hassan Reddick on the edge this offseason after losing Joe Tryon Shoyinka. I'm somewhat lost here, but
Campbell,
because, huh?
Jihad Campbell.
Yeah, I mean that's the perfect selection.
I mean, blitzer. They're looking for a long-term answer.
It's
They've
the
been
perfect selection.
circulating with their
Yes.
LB2s. I mean, Campbell
Yeah.
with Todd Bowles is like nightmare fuel.
Yeah, we talked about this, I think, in the last one, and you made this connection with how much Todd Bowles, and look, maybe he wouldn't want to blitz as often as he does, but Jihad Campbell can do a little bit of everything. Levante David is still trucking it. I think he's a future Hall of Famer. He is that good. But outside of him, anytime they had to play someone else, it was terrible, and they got targeted relentlessly. And I mean relentlessly. So yeah, you have your Mike Greens, and I would even go with a longer player in Ezraku maybe for them. But Jihad Campbell is going to be the selection. What a fun watch he is.
I think this will be my final selection, my mock draft. No
Okay.
matter what, the fit is perfect.
Denver Broncos, pick 20. Since we've, I think, done our last mock draft, they've added Evan Ingram. So where do they go now? Is it offense or defense?
So this is another team where it's like the needs aren't super obvious. Running back is one. People link Omarion Hampton to the Broncos to be like this
Not sure if
joker.
he's not
I
what
just
they
don't.
need.
That's not exactly the style that they're looking for. Like
No,
they're
there's
looking
one
for
guy.
a pass catching specialist. Hampton
Yeah.
can do that, but he's not like this
No.
joker. Like he's a different
There's one
style
guy.
back. So I don't think it would be Hampton here. Now maybe I'm wrong. I don't think the tight ends are going to make it this far. They have very good evaluations to me. An underrated need for them is edge rusher just a little bit. I know Nick Bonito had an awesome season, but just a little bit of depth behind him. And I don't think Mike Green's going to last very long. So I'm going to give him Mike Green here.
Oh,
He is
you're
an
breaking my
outside
heart.
linebacker. I know. True outside linebacker. He would fit the scheme. He is as athletic as they get. It seems like teams are okay with his history, which I have no insight on, but that's the reports I've seen out of it. And 96 percentile on the 3-cone, and the pressure rate numbers were there. He had a great Senior Bowl, so yeah, he's going high.
Yeah, I don't know if this will happen because Nick Bonito is like a peak, not rotational player for them, but get off the field type, and they seem to have overlapping skill sets entirely. I will add, just to close out this conversation with Mike Green, you mentioned his 3-cone time, 95th, 96th percentile at 6.85. Everyone knows about the list. We have no nominees for the list this year when it comes to offensive linemen, but the next closest position with one singular athletic test, if you test at the top of that category, it's 3-cone and pass rushers, especially if you go in round one. It's 6.88 or 6.89 or better. That's Von Miller, J.J. Watt, Bruce Irvin, Melvin Ingram, Barkevius Mingo, Joey Bosa, T.J. Watt, Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson.
Pretty good.
I would say only one of those guys busted in Barkevius Mingo.
Yeah.
And that's it. So
Yeah.
if you have round one talent plus this, that's a really, really good combo. Before I click Mike Green's name, is there just no way I can talk you into Travion Henderson here?
It just seems so early, man. I think there's a chance
But
he's gonna be
this is
available.
what they need.
It definitely is, but I think that they would rather roll the dice on him being available in the second round. And at least for this year, like they have Evan Ingram in this like kind of joker role. I do think ultimately they're going to draft a running back. Henderson in 20th overall, man, like that just seems so early.
I will say this. I feel like, and I'm not saying that he is this player, but I feel like you and I could have sat here a couple years ago on March 25th and said, Jahmyr Gibbs, top 20 pick, that's way too early, And just the element and how much Sean Payton loves to have specific ideas and roles for these types of players. They don't have anyone on their offense that can do what Travion Henderson does. He has thrived with players in his past like this, especially one with the pass pro skills. He's not just instantly a gadget joker for them. He's instantly their best running back, period, in my opinion. And like he takes this offense to a different level for me. And I don't think like the 20th overall pick for them is out of bounds with that.
No, I could see them doing it. Just he's like 50th overall in most people's boards, and that's where their next pick is.
Who cares?
They have a chance to get him in the second round.
51 overall, Trevor Henderson will not be on the board, is my guess.
That's okay. Mike Green's
Is
much
it?
better.
I mean,
Mike
is there
Green's much
anyone
better.
else here that can do what he does? Not to me. Not to me.
Yeah, that's okay.
But I like him a lot more than you do. So,
Yeah.
all right, you're going to go Mike Green is the selection that you made at 20. That brings us to 21 and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm working under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers signs with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Same.
And maybe that happens here in the next few days. So if you go and look at their depth chart, it's kind of full at all the spots in a interesting way after, the DK Metcalf trade. So wide receiver is certainly taken care of. Tight end is taken care of. Offensive line, they're moving Broderick Jones to left tackle. Good luck to you. Aaron Rodgers behind that, but that's all taken care of. And then on defense, you have your edge rushers. You have your interior pieces. You have your linebackers. You didn't bring Darius Slay on to be, your cornerback 3. He's going to be a starter opposite Joey Porter Jr. There's one glaring spot here that the Steelers have spent first-round draft capital in the past. Dare I say it's running back?
I mean, this is the Najee Harris profile with just a little bit faster. So they've done it before. I do think Jahdae Barron would also make some sense as the nickel corner for them. But yeah, this was one where they don't have a second round pick. And I'm pretty sure they're getting a running back in the first, third, or fourth round. So I think this is the team that's most live to go running back after the Genty teams pass. I think that the Steelers are the team that would do it.
Like, this team is going to keep their identity. It is Arthur Smith and his running scheme, and he's going to probably force Aaron Rodgers into his specific style of offense. We know they've invested a ton on the trenches on both sides of the ball. So much wide receiver investment now too. Like, why is it not Amari Hampton?
It's hilarious.
This is going to shock you, and I don't want to reveal running back rankings. I'd be more comfortable of the Broncos taking Trevion Henderson at number 20 than I would the Steelers taking Amari Hampton at 21, just from like a pure change the game standpoint. But Amari Hampton in this role paired with Jaylen Warren is
it's thunder and lightning all over again. Never learn from your mistakes.
It's a volume sponge all over again, man. It really is.
I know. It's the most hilarious outcome.
And I don't want to undersell Amari Hampton, like, especially once they get to the red zone, he's going to score a whole bunch of touchdowns for this team. But yeah, a lot of these teams close the book on areas we thought they could attack. That's smart for them. Makes it more difficult for us. But, Kenny Gainwell is not preventing them from taking Amari Hampton at 21 overall. Let's put it that way. All right.
Definitely not.
22 for you, the Chargers.
Yeah, so all of the Michigan guys are off the board. So that there goes about 3 of the guys that would fit in this. Jahdae Barron's, I think, the best player available. They've kind of hit on some late round guys, and Barron will play the slot. They get Derwin James in there. So I think he would make some sense, but it's not like the most obvious need. This defensive line is a disaster. I mean, they're going year to year with Khalil Mack, but beyond that, they got pretty much nobody. So I would go to the defensive line, and I think that Shamar Stewart is still available. Yeah, I think Shamar Stewart would make a lot of sense for the Chargers. Definitely needs some development. But if you are looking at a coaching staff that you would at least have a chance to develop, it would be with Minter and Harbaugh. And this team has some time to develop somebody like Shamar Stewart. Shamar Stewart is an incredible athlete, played like it sometimes, but kind of doesn't find the ball very well as a run stopper, even though he's really athletic and big. I like that he dropped weight. I think it's going to help his finish ability. So this is going to be a very boom bust pick. But if you look at the defensive line for the Chargers, it is a total mess. And I think that Shamar Stewart, after that combine, he's going round 1. I think there's a chance he surprises inside like the top 12 or 15. But I do think this is kind of his general range.
I mean, Shamar Stewart is a kind of Sean Payton pick at number 20, who has taken, more upside talents than maybe developed pass rushers in the past too. And I actually think that Shamar Stewart created a lot of disruption. It was like that final move, that final moment. Sometimes he even fell to the ground before, bringing a quarterback down. So yeah, I mean, even at 20, if the Broncos want to go in that direction, and he could go much earlier than this too, much earlier. Like the Bengals for example. If they move off of Trey Hendrickson, that's a spot for them. So maybe this is the latest that Shamar Stewart stays on the board. I will add, we haven't had our second wide receiver selected.
Matthew Golden, this would be definitely in the range. I just think that he's going to want the defensive line to look a little bit better than however old Khalil Mack is, as like very clearly your best defensive lineman on a 1-year deal. And like you were thinking about cutting him outright this offseason. Like there's no way that they're not addressing that in the draft.
Shamar Stewart it is. That brings me to the Green Bay Packers at pick number 23. I do not totally love everything that's on the board here. I have a difficult time with the Packers in general. If other wide receivers are off the board, man, I would love to force Jaden Higgins in the spot because I think he kind of fulfills elements that they're missing in their wide receiver room. On defense, they have a whole bunch of names. You know, they've invested a ton in edge rushers, especially recently with Lucas Van Ness. The book is unwritten if he's going to make good on that draft capital that they spent on him. Even the interior defensive line, I think you could say the same thing with Devontae Wyatt, for example. And then at corner, Jair Alexander is going to be off of this team. You know, Eric Stokes is already off of this team. There were 2 former first-round corners. And then after that, you paid Nate Hobbs to be your nickel. And then it's Keyshawn Nixon and some major questions on the other outside corner spot. So can I go Barron here?
Barron's going to be interesting. And this is kind of where he was initially going to be a slot player. This last year, he played outside corner. He actually held up pretty well there. He's definitely fast enough. The issue with him is he's just so tiny in terms of his length and doesn't meet a lot of thresholds. I don't know what the Packers' arm length threshold is at corner. I know.
Yeah, and they have thresholds at a whole bunch of positions.
Right. So that's what would make me nervous. I think that Nate Hobbs and Jedi Barron kind of similar. So you'd be putting Barron outside. So I don't necessarily love the fit. I will throw out Matthew Golden, man. I mean, Matthew Golden, Christian Watkins, like, is there not like some overlap? Like, they're kind of like,
yeah, there is. I think there's
year.
Total overlap in their games. No, actually, not really. Year. I'm not going to say there's total overlap in their games because Christian Watson is 6'4" and elevates for the football, and Matthew Golden is more of like an outside to inside burner-ish type who is a better route runner on top of it.
Right. That sounds pretty good for what the Packers are looking for.
And yeah, but I think Jaden Reed is like the outside to inside type and a burner that wins after the catch.
Yeah,
like, I don't think that this elevates their wide receiver room. Yeah. And I don't think Jahdae Barron is going to be what they're looking for with less than 30-inch arms.
Okay, so on to the next names. Good luck.
So after saying all of that about the Packers and their depth chart, I don't know if there's like a true fit on the board right here. And there is one team that we neglected on the quarterback front that's going to continue to select them and that have the first pick of the second round. And that's the Cleveland Browns. So get that trade chart out, Hayden. I'm going to utilize your brain for this. The Browns are going to give up 33 for pick 23 and also give up what do they need?
Okay, so 580 and then 760. Yeah, this would be it's kind of in between 67 and 94. So I think that 67 gets this done. They have a bunch of picks, or it can be 94 plus some. So whatever the Packers you think they would rather have. I would guess maybe 94 plus some day 3 selections.
How about 94 and 104?
Perfect. There we go.
Does that work?
Yep.
Packers give up 23 for the Browns, 33, 94, and 104 to move up from 33, 10 spots to draft quarterback Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. Your thoughts?
Well, all of a sudden, now you have a full-time wide receiver in Hunter. Jerry Jeudy's is your number 2 where he belongs. I think Cedric Tillman's like a good sacrificial X receiver type. David Njoku, and you're going to sling the ball all over the yard with Jackson Dart, with Kevin Stefanski. Like, that's how you're going to rebuild this. I can see the path here. I think Dart's going to take some time just coming from the offense that he's coming from, but he also can scramble like a lot better than people are giving him credit for, and throw on the move. And he's got a dense build too. So it's not the pristine environment, but I can understand if Andrew Berry's like, look, we got a great wide receiver prospect and we're rolling the dice on a quarterback and it fails in 2-3 years. will just swing again at the quarterback position. And hopefully by the time we move on from the Deshaun Watson contract, we've hit on Jackson Dart going into his third and fourth year on this rookie contract.
Could you see them moving up for any other quarterback other than Jackson Dart? Or at pick 33, is that like way too early for a swing on like Jalen Milroe, for example?
I haven't seen anybody talk about Milroe that highly. I have Milroe as a top 50 overall player on my board, but I'm sick in the head, and I see the path to an elite ceiling. But most people don't see it that way. I think that Shuck in the second round is somebody that they've been um, kind of matched with as well. But 33rd overall for Shuck is also a little bit earlier than people are expecting. So I think they'd be more likely to go either Dart falls into their lap at 33, which I don't think Dart's guaranteed to go first round, or if all of a sudden the trade parameters aren't that high, they can just go up because they have 10 draft picks to kind of move around the board.
I can already hear the comments. 94 and 104 were not enough. So why don't we do like 67 and 104 for the people out there? So, because it's for a quarterback. It's for a quarterback. All right. That's what we're going to do. Bing, bang, boom. Jackson Dart. And that brings us back to 24 for you for the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay. This is a team that has no draft capital whatsoever. So I do think that the Browns and the Vikings could also make a lot of sense. Now, I think Barron could be great for them for sure. I think that they just need secondary help in general. So he's at the top of my list. Defensive tackle and interior offensive line would be in the mix here. I just don't think that Barron's going to be available that many times at 24th overall. So I'm tempted to go just best player available. Inside outside versatility, played a lot of ball at Texas. And I think that he would really help Brian Flores.
Now, my only concern with that is Byron Murphy basically plays that like same role for them, and he's a big time player for them.
Yeah, he would be like an outside guy in the way I'm looking at this.
Okay.
The conversation is going to be really split on Jahdae Barron, just because he played outside corner as a senior and actually played well, but the rest of the time he was a nickel.
It's interesting. Obviously on the edge they have Jonathan Grenard, they have Van Ginkel, they have Dallas Turner, so they're not going to attack there. That's where their major investment was. Right. Next, I get an easy one. Matthew Golden, come on down for the Houston Texans at pick number 25. Look, we've talked through every single player here so far. I understand big draft has Matthew Golden going much, much, much earlier than this. It makes sense. He ran a 4.29. But if there's a chance for Matthew Golden to go to the Houston Texans, I think it's a really intriguing landing spot for him, because that is outside to inside versatility that he showed at Houston and at Texas. He knows the area, going to the University of Houston for 2 years before this. Don't watch that tape if you love Matthew Golden. I'm just going to throw that out there. We'll have more on that in his prospect profile. But here it is. Matthew Golden, pick 25.
Yeah, the CJ Stroud and Ibuka, that would be tough scenes there, but it does sound like Golden is ranked ahead of Emeka a ton. So I can see it.
Okay. Next, LA Rams, pick 26.
So I think that offensive line would make some sense. Like, this is a team where I do think that Booker could be a fit for them. This is a team also that, like, I want to go defensive backs at times, but you just never know the commitment that they're putting into that position, just in terms of safety. So like, you have like Nick Amanawari available. Would they go safety? It's just like not a position that they typically really invest in. What's your thoughts on the Rams at safety?
Yeah, with the Rams, I think they're also in an interesting spot, because safety, like Cam Curl has been, and Cam Kitchens, both of them been like really impactful players for them. So I'm not sure if they're really into replacing. There's a second tier of corners that I don't know if we're giving enough love to in this area. Siobhan Revel, obviously coming off an ACL injury at ECU. AZ Thomas out of Florida State, I think might have some first round appeal for some teams out there in certain defensive schemes. So again, we've only talked about a couple of these corners, but this might be an area. I'm not saying specifically for the Rams, but this might be an area where they might be interested in them.
Yeah, Maxwell Harrison also ran in the 4.2s, and he's a monster. So,
I mean, here's a question. This team doesn't really have a center. They've like tried to rotate Steve Avila there a little bit. Can we get Gray Zabel to play center?
Yeah, Zabel and Booker were like the two guys I kept going back
I just think Booker's not an athlete enough. Like, I understand. I'm sure you
It's
saw
where's the
that
beef? This is
he
the
improved his
Rams.
10-yard split. I'm sure you saw this. You know how he did that, Hayden?
Yeah, he stopped at 15 yards.
Correct. He did not run a 40. He only ran the 10, and that's it. So I'm going to say that's cheating when we're coming
Right.
to athletic testing. Like, that's not
Yeah.
the same exercise that everyone else is doing in order to get their 10-yard split. I am not saying he's a non-NFL caliber athlete. That just gets a bit of a more difficult conversation for a first round selection.
Yeah. Apparently, everyone's just going first round with Booker still. But let's go Zabel. Gray Zabel. He can play everywhere. Most people believe he
14
will end
snaps at
up
center,
at
baby.
center. Yeah. And I believe he might even played center in high school or something weird like that as well. But in my rankings, I have him as a center. He needs to get a little bit stronger, in my opinion, but that matters the least at center because you're kind of double teaming for a lot of your
Yeah,
snaps.
and look, they have their tackles basically, especially on the left side with Alaric Jackson, who just brought back. Again, they try to rearrange and like find the best five. And then at center, it's Bo Limmer and it's Coleman Shelton. I mean, Coleman Shelton was one of the worst centers in the league
Not
last
good
year.
enough.
Like,
Yeah, this
let's
is a
just
good fit.
lock it down. Let's lock it down here. And to be honest, I don't know if they need another receiver with Tutu Atwell and his 1 year, 10 million. Like, their trio at wide receiver, they've got it. They've got it this year. So, all right, Gray Zabel it is. That brings us to the Baltimore Ravens at pick 27. I think this is an interesting conversation. Is it, hey, a left guard with a veteran in Chidobe Awuzie? Is that the combo? Or is it we can go with a young corner and then a veteran interior offensive lineman? I'm not sure if they've already made this selection, but they basically have like filled the depth chart out at a bunch of these spots. One that also stands out to me is an edge pass rusher. I think Odafe Owe might be finishing his career here with the Ravens. Tavius Robinson really popped up in the playoffs for them. And then Calvin Noy had like a career year at age 37 or whatever it is. And then we haven't heard much from David Ajabo from his rough Achilles injury, I believe it was, out of school. So like Ezra Raku is a player for them that I could see. James Pierce is a player. But I mean, Ezra Raku's length stands out here for me. And seems like a Raven selection.
Yeah, I can see it. Big character guy on top of it. He checks all the boxes as well. He's one of these guys that doesn't have like a crazy dominant trait, but that's why he's available this late. But pressure rates, athletic testing, size, the length that you're talking about, it all does fit. So I think this could be a team. Donovan Jackson, left tackle, left guard, Booker. I definitely think that could be a fit. Booker's one of the weird guys to me just because he's not going to be a fit for everybody because of his lack of athleticism. But man, like downhill with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, now you have Booker as one of the guards. Like to me, that does make some sense. But I'm a big as a Raku guy as well, and I can see him going late round 1.
All right, that's where we're going here.
Sweet.
That brings you to the Detroit Lions at pick 28.
Yeah, this is really great for him. I think that guard is ripe, and they have a couple of them. Booker and Jackson both make sense to me. Let's go with Booker. This team runs the rock right at you.
Man. Call me a hater. I just don't see how that happens now, but that's just me.
Yeah, this is like kind of where I have him in my personal rankings. Look, like he just doesn't allow that much pressure and really is good on the ground. You just have to hide him with the type of runs that you're going to.
They have one of the most athletic right tackles in the league, and you're going to pair him with one
But
of
they
the
pull
most
him like they
unathletic
don't
right
need
guards.
they can pull, have
Just
all
saying.
your fun with Penny Sewell and then hammer time with Booker up the middle.
Yeah. Okay. We'll give them Tyler Booker for you. And that brings us to the Washington Commanders at pick number 29. What an outstanding job the Washington Commanders did last year. And then this offseason, they showed that they were not scared to trade away draft picks for veterans. I mean, they did it in season for Marshawn Lattimore, then after the season for Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil. I am intrigued to see if they are done along their offensive line. I would assume that they are because Brandon Coleman, they now need to find a starting spot for him. Are they done at wide receiver, or do they want Terry McLaurin, Debo Samuel, and then to upgrade there at the exact same time? And then this defense, it's probably prime for some help because
Yeah.
the edge rushers they have are like, hey, let's win with just guys out there. So like
Yeah.
Durant's Armstrong. Durant has a history with Dan Quinn. Cleveland Furl, former top 10 bust. Dietrich Wise has been in the league forever, super long, massive hands. Jacob Martin had like a moment, I believe, with the Houston Texans a couple years ago. So is there like an edge rusher that,
Pierce.
yeah, but like, I don't know if he's a Commanders type of guy.
Mm. That's going to be the thing with James Pierce is
I don't know
the
if he's a
best of
Commanders type of
them
guy.
is awesome. These other guys are just not round one guys. Scoring, I think, is round 3. Jackson probably played himself into round 2, but yeah, it's a tough spot. Like someone's gonna be rolling the dice on James Pierce.
But whenever I think of Dan Quinn, it's always like these versatile pieces that he gets the most out of. He puts them in advantageous spots. And while Nick Emmanwori got some juice early on as like a maybe top 10, top 15 guy, Jeremy Chin is no longer on this team. This is like a supercharged version of that. And I think that would be a really fun complementary piece who can get you out the field in certain blitz packages and really lock down some dynamic players across the NFC if you need to put them in one-on-one situations. I don't think his tape is perfect. We've seen
Yeah.
super athletic safeties fail in the NFL, but some of them were drafted by the Dallas Cowboys in the past.
Definitely so. Yeah, I see the same thing where like I don't fully trust his instincts. I think that there's some times where you don't want to play him in the back half and read things out. But I do think that Jeremy Chin utilization, I think that's a good starting point for him. And he's just bigger and faster than even Chin
Yeah,
was.
and at corner, I was looking for an outside guy, but after signing Jonathan Jones to play in the slot, it certainly seems like they're going to keep a smaller Mike Samerstill on the outside. And Samerstill was, quite good
What a stud.
last year, really, really
Yeah.
good. So, okay, that's the group we're going with. James Pierce would make the most sense, but I just don't know if he's an Adam Peters guy.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a team coming up that rolls the dice.
All
They
right,
can use
well,
them.
let's keep going with the Buffalo Bills at pick 30.
I think they need secondary help. Maxwell Hairston, corner, 4.2s, speed, lots of zone coverage despite his speed. You always kind of think like, oh, he's really fast. He played a lot of man coverage. Not the case with Maxwell Hairston. I think that he's a little bit better than people are giving him credit for. And I think that he would be a fit with just how much zone that the Bills typically run out. So they've tried this a couple years back with Elam, did not work. But that was 4 or 5 years ago. He's no longer on the team. And the cornerback depth chart for Buffalo, it's not pretty.
Maxwell Harrison, it is after the Kyer Elam fiasco from a couple years ago. That's the move. Bet we'll see a corner run here coming up. That brings us to 31 and the Kansas City Chiefs, who had some moving pieces along the offensive line. At one point, they had the highest paid offensive line in the league. In fact, let's look at positional spending right now. The Chiefs are the second most expensive offensive line in the league. Does it feel that way to you?
No, it does not.
No. We know they brought in Jalen Moore. Now, the Jalen Moore contract is basically just a 1-year deal. And to me, it's more of, hey, we know this is our baseline, and let's see if we can continue to improve off of this in the NFL draft. So at worst, we leave the NFL draft with someone of Jalen Moore's caliber at left tackle. And I think what they get here is someone like Josh Simmons,
Yep.
who you don't have to play immediately if you can't because of his injury, but he can be the long-term starter for you at left tackle.
Yeah, it's a great plan. You don't have to rush Josh Simmons back too, and that's always kind of what I fear with some of these guys coming in is they're just so worried that it's gonna be a rookie lost season, and then to me, like if they come back too early from these injuries, like that can be a big problem too. So I think this would be a good fit. They don't care about the regular season anyways. Maybe you plug them in week 10 and all of a sudden you see what you have with them. But yeah, I think that just because they signed more does not mean that they're done here.
And I mean, I could even see an edge rusher here as well. They have a certain type at that spot, so it's not as easy. They also just, lost a safety in Justin Reed, who was a huge part of their organization. So if one of the best safeties do fall in this area, I think that's interesting. But Josh Simmons, I could see going all the way up to the Cincinnati Bengals at pick 17, but we're going to take him here at pick 31, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Alrighty.
32, Philadelphia Eagles.
Donovan Jackson, tackle, guard.
Oh.
I think that they can have him compete for the
Not
spot.
James Pierce. I thought this is the direction you were going to go in.
I think the Chiefs can be a James Pierce team as well.
Okay.
Just speedy edge rusher, willing to take the character risk. So I think Pierce would make some sense. Like he would just like eat the snaps like once Nolan Smith leaves the field. He's not the same caliber player as Nolan Smith, but directionally somewhat similar. Donovan Jackson would just be the Mekhi Becton spot, and then he has the versatility. But I think that he would be the right guard for them immediately.
But wouldn't you say that they made the move for Kenyon Green to be in the Mekhi Becton spot, like a former first round failure for Mekhi Becton to now the Jeff Stoutland University to fill in that spot too?
Yeah, I mean, where do you see the obvious team needs for the Philadelphia Eagles? Like it's just
I would just say they have lost edge rushers. Like who knows what is going to happen here with Bryce Huff? Like he was legit inactive for the freaking Super Bowl after being their signing last offseason. And so, yeah, Ajomo certainly stepped up. We know all about Jalix Hunt. He stepped up as well. Azeez Ojulari was in that 1-year deal. So I guess you could make like the same case that I just did for Kenyon Green on the right side. But if you're leaning more offensive line, I'm with you.
Yeah, let's go with Jackson.
Donovan Jackson it is. Okay, that brings us back to the Green Bay Packers, who took a lot of phone calls from Thursday night, and it feels like the morning after this 1 hour and 30-minute first round that we just
went through.
By the way, hit that subscribe button, all of you out there on the road to 200K. Hopefully we get it by the end of this mock draft. I mean, just pausing here for a moment, resetting. Start of round 2, Luther Burden, not bad. James Pierce, pretty good. Emeka Egbuka, Walter Nolan, interior menace, There's some, Josh Connolly might get some love in this spot. TJ Sanders as well. I'm going to go with a corner though. Like they have failed at a bunch of first round corners in the long term. Short term, they show some flashes. How about Trey Amos?
Yeah, this is somebody I think that's going to be a late riser. I don't necessarily see what he's bad at, tested well. So kind of a little bit off the radar, but Daniel Jeremiah was kind of putting the pieces together. He's like, why exactly is this guy not a consensus top 40 pick? So this is definitely where the party gets started for him.
All right, there it is. Trey Amos to the Green Bay Packers, and that brings you back to the Giants at 34.
Man, so we talked about at the top, they don't need James Pierce. Luther Burden makes some sense to me, but I don't see him being an outside player. And I think, who do you have?
No, I think Luther Burden would be a fun player for them.
He would be. I just wonder, it's like, okay, now you have neighbors outside. You're basically dumping Wan'Dale Robinson, going with Luther Burden. I think that could make
the fan base loves 5'3" with an attitude.
Yeah, exactly. Could they be a linebacker team?
They could be a linebacker team. It's freaking Micah McFadden next to Bobby Okereke. Is there a linebacker that they're interested in?
It would be Schlesinger, UCLA. Now, this would be probably the earliest that he would be going, but I do think there's a chance he's an early round 2 player. The dude just has great coverage skills, man. And he showed up to the combine much bigger than expected. He's like 245, 95th percentile in terms of tackles per game, and just was bigger than people were expecting. So I view him pretty highly, and that's coming from a Trojan. So
okay,
we'll see. We'll see if the NFL shares my opinion.
All right, Tennessee Titans, pick 35, a team that has solidified their offensive line, so they will not be taking one of those linemen. I mean, they need some juice, after taking Cam Ward. Let's give them Luther Burden. So you get Cam Ward, Luther Burden, you have your backfield set, you have your offensive line set on top of it. This team also has one of the worst tight end rooms in the NFL, but Luther Burden here to have some of that manufactured juice. And I also think maybe there's some overlap in how getting Burden and Calvin Ridley to be the motion man pre-snap and getting them into stacks does their best work, but they need it. They need something. I do wonder if they're going for more of a prototype outside big body, if they would even be intrigued to take Jaden Higgins here instead.
Mm.
But I'll go with Luther Burden.
Yeah, it seems like Luther Burden's ranked higher than Jaden Higgins on consensus boards. I disagree with that, but yeah, I think that Luther Burden's probably more round 2 than round 1 at this point.
Now, at the same time, I also think James Pierce is interesting. I will add, they brought in Draymond Jones, and Draymond Jones has had this interesting career arc where it seems like the Titans right now want massive edge rushers because it's like him and Arden Key. And those are big monsters. They're going to press you back with power rushers over and over. I mean, that has to be the biggest defensive line in the league.
Yeah,
When
that's
it's
some big
Arden
boys.
Key, Devondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons, and Draymond Jones, that's a bunch of big boys with Sebastian Joseph Day is like the, rotational defensive run stopper. So just wanted to bring that up. Jacksonville Jaguars pick 36.
Okay. How about wide receiver Emeka Egbuka? Kind of slide him right between. He'll be a slot player. Diami Brown, I think, would be the outside, the third option. You have Brian Thomas to manufacture touches, and then Emeka Egbuka kind of just roaming over the middle of the field. And he's also a player that I think that this staff is going to appreciate because he can actually show up there and block. And I think that he's a good culture fit as well as they're trying to reestablish whatever Jacksonville's been the last decade. So I just don't think that he should be falling this far in the draft either.
By the way, just to look at the picks so far for the Jaguars, they previously took Mason Graham, and that brings them Emeka Egbuka now. So now we're on to the Las Vegas Raiders, who previously took Ashton Genty. There's a ton of running backs on the board right now, so we're not going in that direction. They arguably have 3 edge rushers and Max Crosby, Tyree Wilson, and then Malcolm Kuntz, who they ran it back with. I think they could get better on the interior next to Christian Wilkins, but Christian Wilkins and I think Walter Nolan might be occupying the same exact spot.
What about Jaden Higgins?
Oh man, I like it.
I mean, Genty Higgins, man. All of a sudden, you got and something brewing.
To really get the most out of Max, Christian Wilkins, and Malcolm Kuntz plus Tyree Wilson, like they did bring in Lecky Fotu. But let's go with Tyleik Williams, even though I do love your Jaden Higgins call.
Okay.
The Jaden Higgins show. But that's where we're going to go here.
Maybe you were just setting me up for the 38th overall pick.
New England Patriots bypassed Abdul Carter in the first round for an offensive lineman. They took Will Campbell, and here they are at pick 38. They also have pick 57 coming up as well.
This to me, Jaden Higgins. They need an X receiver, good route runner, catch the ball in contested situations. To me, a pretty reliable player. Like, man, this makes a ton of sense for him, for Drake May, and adding some picks later on, going left tackle / left guard of the future, and then a legit outside weapon. This would be great. And I think that he would actually, if they end up signing Steph Diggs down the line, I think that you all of a sudden have with Pop,
a
Diggs,
trio.
and Higgins, you have something.
We talked about it in the prospect profile with Jaden Higgins that like Xavier Leggett went 32 overall. Keon Coleman went 33. Getting Jaden Higgins at this spot is right in line with that. Right in line. And we like Jaden Higgins quite a bit at pick 38. All right. That brings us to the Chicago Bears at pick 39. Just to remind you, they took Jalen Walker previously. I love this fit. If he somehow gets past Sean Payton in round 1, we are bringing in Trevion Henderson to pair with Ben Johnson. Why not? Look, he's not maybe as electric from tackle to tackle as Jahmyr Gibbs, but he's also going about 25 picks later than where Jahmyr Gibbs went in his NFL draft. Trevion Henderson is one of the best pass pro running backs I've seen come out of college. I actually think he has a legit 3-down skill set. We slightly disagree there. His vision running into the back of offensive linemen about 5 or 6 times this year, not fun, not great, but do I think that Ben Johnson can maximize what Trevion Henderson can bring to an NFL offense and create those maybe one explosive play per game that changes the outcome of that contest? Yes. I trust him more than a lot of coordinators out there. I love this fit.
Yeah. This is like right up their wheelhouse. And I think they'll have to find somebody to take some early down touches from them. And I'm not sure if Swift's long for the team. I don't think that he would be the answer there, but Trevion Henderson, much better at the DeAndre Swift role than DeAndre Swift.
Oh,
Much
Yeah,
better.
and Ben Johnson has made that clear because he previously got rid of DeAndre Swift in the
Bye
DeAndre
bye.
Swift role for Jahmyr Gibbs. So he's about to get Wally Pipp twice by the same play caller.
Yeah, I mean it happens.
It does. Definitely. Not to me, hopefully. Okay, next, New Orleans Saints at pick 40.
Okay, so they went with, was it Will Johnson in round 1?
Yes.
Okay. Let's just do it. We end the slide here with James Pierce. And I think this is a much better range for James Pierce, even if he's not going to be like, let's say he's more limited as a situational pass rusher just because he's not like supremely athletic, like well-rounded athletic. Like he obviously could run in a straight line, but if we're not going to get the 3-cone and the vertical of some of the other guys, he turns in more of a situational pass rusher. Early round 2 could be where he belongs. The character stuff also is going to be a question. So I think that he's like the opposite than what they have with Chase Young, and I think there's room for one more body there. And James Pierce falling this far, I think, would be a surprise to Saints fans.
That brings us back to the Chicago Bears. Waking up after they finish day 2, heading into day 3, you go Jalen Walker, you go Trevion Henderson, and then Hayden. Why not? Josh Connerly or Ursery to fill that left tackle void that we don't know about with Braxton Jones at left tackle.
Iversary ranked higher. Connerly, I think, is consensus-wise a little bit ahead. I just like Ursery's makeup a little bit more than Connerly, who I think had a little bit of like strength issues. Now, that said, in this offense, I don't think it's going to be as important because they're going to get these guys on the move a lot. But both of these guys are going to be round 2 selections for sure.
Yeah. And, Walter Nolan, the interior as like a Grady Jarrett heir apparent, I think would be intriguing here too. But we're going to go with Ursery at this spot. That's quite a draft from the Chicago Bears through the first half of round 2. Okay. New York Jets, Tyler Warren in round 1. What would they take at 42 overall?
So right tackle still open for business. Edge rusher also open for business. And then I think that wide receiver is a big time as well. So of the wide receivers who are available, I'm trying to find a good Garrett Wilson compliment. So
Jalen Noel?
Yeah, I'm just like worried if that's like just not enough size between Wilson and Noel.
Well, if you're looking for size, then you're kind of
it's tough.
Out of gas here, I'm afraid.
Okay, we're going on to a different position. What about edge rusher?
So on the edge, you have Nick Scorton, you have Landon Jackson. Just to give you a heads up, once again, the great Connor Rogers pointed Tyleek Williams here as an interior piece, and then Tate Ratledge at Georgia. But I already gave Tyleek Williams earlier.
Yeah, I do really like the Tyleek call. I think that Tate, this is too early for Tate personally. I know Connor's really high on him, but I don't see him like in this range. JT Tuimoloau, this guy is also could stop the run as well. So this would be more of a day 2 type. You're not expecting like a huge pass rush from him, but the run defense is right there. So I can see this being a good fit for the new Jets regime. Like they had so many good defensive linemen over there.
Yeah, they did. And I mean, they've drafted a whole bunch at the exact same time, but
Let's go
true pass rushing players. Okay. Why don't we give them JT then? Cool.
Yep.
That brings us to the San Francisco 49ers, who were able to pick up Armand Mimbo at pick number 11 to be their right tackle. And so now I kind of want to go corner here. Like, we know that they have lost some corners recently. We know Lenore is one of the best nickels across the league, but like they brought in maybe Trey Brown, and then it's Renardo Green are some of their other corners out there. I think but then, Walter Nolan as an interior upfield disruptor, I think would really, really fit what Robert Saleh has done in his past. And that's what we're going to take here is Walter Nolan at 43.
I think Nolan needs some work, but he's got some tools. And I think that him going to San Francisco, like it's almost like too perfect.
All right. Pick 44, Dallas Cowboys.
They also need corners, like you said, with Diggs. I don't think he's going to play this year at all. Running back also would be in the conversation for them. Let's go AZ Thomas. I think that the Revel pick that could be somebody where this is the range where I think he's going to go to. But like if you're replacing an injured player with an injured player, that
Yeah.
seems a little bit dicey to me. So let's go with AZ Thomas.
Indianapolis Colts trade up for Colson Loveland in round 1 to be a focal point of their passing attack. Love that. Absolutely love that. And here they are at pick 45. Who are the best athletes on the board? And I
Ooh,
say
good
that
question.
tongue in cheek, but not in a way. Now, a lot of the Chris Ballard edge picks have not worked out in totality, but the man is who he is, even if he tries to change. Sometimes you cannot.
Yeah, Landon Jackson's a freak athlete. So if you're looking for athletes, like there's an
So yeah,
option.
let's
Revel would be really fast as well, but if you're trying to win now and you're picking a player coming off injury, that's
yeah, but
suspect.
they have Juju Brents and Charvarius Ward on the
Yeah,
outside.
they're good there.
So
That's right.
okay, that's where we're going. We're going with Landon Jackson. Chris Bowd's hey, trust me, guys. I got this one right with Landon Jackson. Atlanta Falcons 46 for you.
Good stuff. They already got Michael Williams, edge rusher. They can double dip in this position 100%. They can go with linebackers, but there's not one available. They can go with corners. Man, their defensive tackle group is really bad as well. So could you sort by the defensive tackles to see if we have somebody that catches my eyes here?
I understand that some of Draft Twitter loves Darius Alexander. I will point out that he's 25 to 26 years old, and I just don't know how early that can be drafted, even though his tape and his All-Star game stuff was fantastic. TJ Sanders, a lot of people love.
Yeah, they did have Ruka Rororo from last year's draft too. So I wonder if they want to go and get him some more snaps here. Oh man, this is tough. Could they be in the safety mix? Could be center, or I like the tight end shout. Yeah, let's go normal tight end.
An actual NFL tight end. I mean, I think Jared Wilson, the center from Georgia, and get back-to-back Georgia players.
Let's go tight end. Let's go Mason Taylor. This would be a very just right 92 mile an hour fastball.
With your tight end rankings a little bit?
Not necessarily. But this is where consensus rankings are putting Mason Taylor. He's starting to get some
I really like
love.
Mason Taylor. We'll get to his profile later on, but the word that and the phrase you'll hear about Mason Taylor is that his best football is ahead of him.
Definitely so. And it better be, because he didn't like completely win me over, but I can see the path that he's on. I think he's going to be a mid-tier starter.
Now, if this happens, do you think Kyle Pitts gets moved during draft weekend? Because I think that's definitely still on the table.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't seen Kyle Pitts buzz at all so far.
Maybe it's because no one wants him.
Curious.
All right. But he is one of those types that gets moved during draft weekend.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely.
All right, Mason Taylor it is for you. That brings us to the Arizona Cardinals. Again, at pick 16, they took Derek Harmon. And then here we are at pick 47. I think they could still use a corner. And then we already gave him the interior piece. So why not go with a corner here? I mean, Revel's up there. And I know it's the ACL, but what we just saw with, the Philadelphia Eagles and reworking their cornerback room, we know JG comes from that territory, and that's a big part of building up this group after you've already built the interior. So let's go with Siobhan Revel, the corner from ECU, who, if he didn't have an ACL, then we probably would, or if he did have an ACL, and if it wasn't injured, then we would probably be talking about him at the end of round 1, if not middle of round 1.
Yeah, I think that he's still going to be a top 50 player. He's that good.
Miami Dolphins at 13 took Kenneth Grant. 48, who did they take?
Okay. Defensive tackle was a good shout out. Let's go to the offensive line. Enough already.
Yep.
Give me tackles, give me guards, give me centers.
Connerly, right there.
Connerly would be a great spot for him.
I mean, we are flying through this. That makes so much sense. Those two positions, one at 13, one at 48, simply add up for them. Okay. Cincinnati Bengals. They could have also used Connerly here, but instead at pick 17, they took Malachi Starks. And here we are. Offensive line, they have a huge shout. Ursery, they would have loved. We're going to go with the guard for this team. Jonah Savaina from Arizona. They cut Alex Kappa. Man, this guy has 300 plus snaps at basically 3 positions. Just get him on the field, make it work. This team certainly needs to invest. Again, could have used Ursery or Connerly, but here you go interior instead. Next, Seattle Seahawks. They're going to about to have back-to-back picks here. Pick 50. What's up for them? And they also have pick 52 coming up.
Yeah, this could be where you go with the center out of Georgia. They
Yeah,
have
Kelvin
50
Banks.
and
I mean, we've got to
52.
retool this entire thing.
I know, and I think just double dipping it. I think it'd be Tate Rutledge would
Okay.
be the option. He can play guard or center in the leagues. He can play either spot here.
By the way, this Willie Lampkin guy who's like 5'10",
Fascinating.
I have a better vert than he does.
Wow,
That's not a joke. He posted 23.5-inch vert.
that's tough.
I mean, that's
That's tough.
20.
That's
Did you
tough.
hear me?
I also have one.
23.5-inch vert.
And I believe my wife, when we were at USC, we were in some like
I
human
don't mean to
biology
vert
class.
shame, but that's like real bad.
She had a higher vert than that.
Yes. Wow. Anyways, just wanted to point that out. Tate Rutledge here, and the Seahawks might come back and take another offensive lineman. Who knows? Denver Broncos, pick 20, and now at pick 51. As previously predicted, Trevion Henderson is off the board. I think we need some type of juice for this offense. I think we got to have it here, you know? Could it be at wide receiver? I don't really see Jack Beck Jalen Noel's an interesting one. The only problem with that is we know that Sean Payton at wide receiver loves size. Like that's his thing.
Beck is a big slot. I think that he's going to be in this range. This might be a little bit too early for him.
I feel like they already have enough pieces of that type of player, you know?
Yeah.
So then let's look at running back. Like
now we're talking.
I don't know if people have the wrong impression. Maybe my impression is just different. So many of his best runs were getting him off tackle and on the edge. And I don't know if that's exactly what Sean Payton is talking about with this.
It's none of these guys.
Is Cam Scatterbo like the worst shout ever? He's just not dynamic and fast enough with juice to be what Sean Payton is talking about.
He caught so many passes, but it's not the Joker style type that you're talking about. He's hard-nosed and rugged, but
I mean, this is why they're taking Trevion Henderson at 20 and not looking back. Because if you get beyond this, it's like Jaden Blue a bit later on as a passing down back, Brashard Smith a bit later on as a passing down back. Look, I know we're here. Trevion Henderson is off the board. None of these backs bring that same level of juice and dynamism in terms of make you miss, turn the corner, run up the sideline. But I don't think that means that Sean Payton won't want to invest still in these running backs. Like, I can see him liking Quinshon Judkins once he gets the edge and those outside runs. I can also see him seeing what I see with Cam Scatterbo. And it's like, oh, that's a James Conner clone. I can use him in every single down, every single set, and allow him to catch a whole bunch of passes. So while everyone is zigging with Trevion Henderson, which we would do if he was on the board, I'm going to zag here and give them Mr. Scatterbo.
I mean, he had 99th percentile. It's not an exaggeration in receiving yards per game as in his final season among drafted running backs. In my notes, excels on swings, screens, Texas routes, couple double moves, even on the perimeter. So yeah, it's not as fast as the Joker that you're talking about typically in this offense, but the production does tell you the story that this guy was heavily utilized at Arizona State.
Broncos, low-key difficult team to draft for right now. Next, Seattle Seahawks at pick 52 for you.
Okay.
So who we've taken so far, Kelvin Banks to play tackle, Tate Rutledge to probably play center. And then here they are at 52 with some interesting spots up front.
Yeah, I think that they can be a tight end team here too. So Arroyo would stand out to me potentially. I think wide receiver is also in the mix for him. Let's do Arroyo. We talked about Colston Loveland in round one.
It just reminds me so much of Noah Fant.
I know he really does, but at least he's a little bit cheaper. And we don't know that he's bad yet. There's always he could be the Noah Fant that we were hoping for.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
If we look at wide receiver for a different type than what's on the roster right now, so not JSN and not Cooper Kupp, is that Trey Harris?
It is Trey Harris. Jalen Noel would be more of like the Tyler Lockett type. He can play on the perimeter, but
he's vertical.
Three really tiny players like JSN, Cooper Kupp, and
Jalen Royals.
No, I like him in the slot too. It would be Trey Harris. I'm cool with that. We can do Trey Harris. He was utilized on the sideline a bunch down the field, and I think that's kind of what this offense is going to be asking him to do. And I think eventually he would start playing over MVS, if not right away. So it's actually, yeah, the more I think about it, Trey Harris does make a lot of sense.
All right. If we're just looking for, average depth of target, 12 last year, deep yards, 399 deep catches, 9 of them this past year. So yeah, we'll go with Trey Harris. It's an interesting draft. Okay. Tampa Bay. We know at 19, we love the connection with Jod Campbell with the defense that they run. And that brings us pick 53. Nick Scorton, I think, is somewhat interesting here.
He was
they like
massive.
Big edges. Go ahead. Yeah.
Massive, but he kind of sucked, if I'm being honest. But this is kind of the range. Like I think they have to figure out what size he wants to play at and then develop him a little bit. And that's kind of what Tampa Bay's been doing.
Like, I think corner at Zion McCollum and Jamel Dean, and you have that figured out too. So why not continue to add pass rushing help up front?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think DB makes some sense. Like, could this be a mystery like quarterback team in round 2?
No.
Like Tyler Shuck? You don't think so? Yeah.
I don't think so. You know who was, and Brett Coleman loves him some Josiah Stewart. I know he's like tiny and doesn't necessarily fit exactly this because he's 6'1", 245. But that's something to keep in mind. Okay, we're going to give him Nick Scorton. Green Bay Packers. We know they moved back to pick 33. They also got pick 54 and I believe 67. That's what we changed it to. So here you go. Pick 54. What are the Packers going to take?
I'm finding him a wide receiver that we can trust. That's the mission right here. It's not Emanure. Jack Beck would make some sense.
Are there any interior defensive linemen that you think are worth it?
Okay, that's a good shout too.
Darius Alexander's. I think TJ Sanders is an interesting name.
Yeah, let's go TJ Sanders. He's somebody I need to watch, but
I think TJ Sanders is a worthwhile selection here.
Okay, cool. That works.
I feel bad for Darius Alexander because, again, he was dominant. Was it the Senior Bowl he was at? But again, he'll turn 25 in August. He'll turn 25 in August. Okay, so next we have the LA Chargers. Took a fun player to pair with Khalil Mack on the edge and Shamar Stewart. And so at 55 here, I still think they could attack running back. I mean, they have Najee Harris on basically a 1-year deal. I think there's a pretty big gap between Judkins and like the rest of this group. What do you think?
Possibly. It kind of just depends on Sampson and Johnson. I think that he's definitely better than the Harvey tier. So yeah, the thing with Najee is like he's going to be there for early down stuff. And I think that's where Judkins is going to be. Now Judkins is much burstier, so you could have
now
a Dobbins.
The other thing you could do here is we've talked about tight ends. And I think Terrence Ferguson is an interesting name. I think Elijah Arroyo is of a vertical type player. And then you can also add to their wide receiver room. I know they brought back Mike Williams, but what does Mike Williams necessarily have left? And then I keep wanting to put Jalen Noel with someone. And like the balance that he can have with Ladd McConkey, I think would be really fun, even though QJ, had a boatload of touchdowns last year. Now, I also think this team like has a pretty massive need along the defensive interior.
Yes.
Like Tyre Tart, they claimed. Deshaun Hand has kind of moved around everywhere. You know what? Let's do it. He's ranked much higher than this. Let's give them Darius Alexander.
All righty.
Plug and play immediately. There it is. All right. Buffalo Bills have 2 picks in round 2 after taking Maxwell Harrison at pick 30. At pick 56, where did they go?
Okay, so looking at some team needs for them, safety is a big one. Let's go right to safety. Notre Dame's got a safety I don't think we've taken yet. Yep, Xavier Watts. Perfect. So this team, they've always invested into the safety position. It looks really bad on paper. Double dip in the secondary. I think that makes a lot of sense for them.
Moving on, New England Patriots, Will Campbell, Jaden Higgins, and now at pick 57.
Do it.
I mean, don't dare me to do it.
Do it.
There, you know what else is perfect though? And look, I'm a Ramondre guy, but they could also take a back here, and it could be Judkins. You know,
the weird thing with Ramondre, they just paid him a lot.
I agree, but all of Patriots Twitter thinks that they are taking another running back. Now, if they don't, I'll have a whole bunch of Ramondre backs. We're just going to double it up.
I love it.
We're going to take Will Campbell, Jane Higgins, and Jalen Noel.
What a draft.
I mean, Nick Rubman, you know where my direct deposit is. Next.
That is athletes and positions of need. I love it.
And after trading down from, I mean, that's what you say is, look, we win the mock draft simulator. We can trade down from pick number 4 and give up Abdul Carter if we end with those 3 players. Okay, Houston Texans, they pick Matthew Golden at 25. Here they are at 58.
I mean, we got to be thinking offensive line here, right? So I would just sort by that and let me see what the names that we have.
All right. Tackle, I think. I mean, you can go back to Imbo.
Perfect.
Imbo? Okay.
Perfect. He's positional versatility. I think that they are looking for interior players, specifically that they have Fisher and Howard as the tackles, and Howard can play inside as well. So this is just like best 5 guys that we can find.
Right. And then they brought in Cam Robinson too. Man, it's amazing to look at. Like they've just brought in a bunch of bodies, you know?
Yes.
Cam Robinson, Laken Tomlinson, Ed Ingram, Trent Brown. They spent a 2nd-round pick on Blake Fisher. The year before that, they spent a 2nd-round pick on Juice Scruggs. They're just going to say, we're going to bring in more and more and more and see what best 5 fit together. Baltimore Ravens, pick 27. Oh, that would have been a good selection for them here. I hate when that happens. I got sniped.
Welcome to the draft.
Took Ezeraku, and then here we are at pick 59. I mentioned earlier, filled in one of the starting spots with a veteran in Chidobe Awuzie. We're going to give them Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame, 6 foot 190, 21 years of age. I mean, Darian Porter, man, 6'4", 200. He's 24 though. Okay, Benjamin Morrison it is. You're up next, Detroit Lions.
Okay, so team needs for me, they could go with that wide receiver spot that's open. Defensive line, they definitely have enough bodies out there, but it's always a position that I think they're looking to make some improvements for. Secondary, they're good. Linebacker, they're good. Man, this team's just so stacked. Let's pull up. Is there a wide receiver that we think could fit?
Can Jack Beck take the Tim Patrick role?
I mean, definitely
now and into the future.
Yeah, definitely could. I think character-wise, right in their wheelhouse as well. So, yeah, I think this would be a pretty solid addition for them. I'm not expecting Beck to be like a go-to target, but he's a dirty work type of guy that I think can get open on the perimeter by himself. So I think that's exactly kind of what they're looking for.
I think, edge rushers at pick 60 are very difficult to come by. Like Jack Sawyer seems super effort all the time.
That's like it's like 2 on the nose. Like that's like I mean, Lions going Sawyer with Hutchinson. It's almost too much.
Princely,
I haven't watched him, but this is the range that he's supposed to go.
Okay, because I would say that just one more player to get others off the field is an area to look at. Because on run stuffers, you have DJ Reader and you have Roy Lopez and you have Lee McNeil.
Yeah,
those are pretty freaking good. All right, so you wanted to go with Jack Beck here.
Yeah, let's do that.
Washington Commanders took a versatile safety, South Carolina, Emin Mori, at pick 29. Here we are at pick 61. Could
they be a running back team?
Yeah, I can see that with Judkins. I mean, I could have seen it even more with Scadaboo to pair him with. I think they need pass rushing. We're going to give him Princely here.
Perfect.
So pick 62, back up here with the Buffalo Bills. They've reworked their secondary. Maxwell Harrison, corner. Xavier Watts, safety. What's up next for them? Yeah,
this is a team that doesn't have like glaring needs after this, and they're kind of going best player available. Do they dare double dip at corner and go Porter as a developmental guy? I think this is a little bit too early for him personally, but
why don't we add some edge juice? I mean, they have Joey Bosa on a short-term deal. They did have Michael Hoyt and they have Greg Russo and AJ Epinesa, I guess.
That's their entire roster. It's the guys like that.
But they have Hoyt and Ogunjobi are suspended for the first 6 games of the season.
Okay, Buffalo Bills, in terms of team needs, after you got corner and safety off there, they're kind of set. They're looking for I think some just freaking juice, like they need to hit on somebody, which also means you got to roll the dice on somebody. Omar Norman Lott.
Yeah.
Just like all juice pass rusher, not for everybody, but look at that pass rush win rate, 19% from the interior.
That's absurd.
From the interior. Now,
yeah, I mean,
he was in a rotation.
He's one of my favorite prospects in this class, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he was in a rotation. But he would be in a rotation here, and you're like, you just need something like a little bit of a
Yeah,
spark.
get off
I
the
think
field. There it is. Omar Norman Lott. Kansas City Chiefs took Josh Simmons uh, in the first round. And so here they are in the second round. You know, people are going to hate this. I'm going with Quinshon Judkins.
I can see it. He's like Pacheco if Pacheco was good.
Yeah, if Pacheco wasn't a 6th or 7th round selection.
Yeah, that's honestly like pretty damn accurate. Runs hard, burst.
They need some, like, I actually think he has some explosive plays. Go back to his time at Ole Miss, and then again get him on the edge. And they were 15+ yard runs pretty consistently. Something has to happen for this offense to create explosives, and maybe that comes in the running game. So yeah, we're gonna go with Quinshon Judkins here. I really like this pick actually.
Yeah, it's not
I really
bad.
like this one. All right, and we close it out with the Philadelphia Eagles at pick 64 for you.
Ooh, let's see if I can find something spicy for them. So I went with Donovan Jackson to fight for the Mekhi Becton open spot.
Is there any edge? Oh! What about Josiah Stewart? They've taken some like
okay
smaller edge rushers in the past. I mean, even Bryce Huff is like that.
Interesting. Yeah, but I wonder if they're not liking that as much at the moment.
We'll close out this 2-round mock draft with Darian Porter at the corner for the Philadelphia Eagles. All right. That's the draft. We're getting analyzed right now. This is way too long. We're not going to go through every single pick. But that was a lot of fun. Just a cool 2 hours for the people out there. If you've made it this far, hit that subscribe button.
Give a shout out to
50,000 of you
Weaves
that
in
watch
the
this
flat.
probably are not subscribed. So change that right now.
Yeah, Weaves deserves a shout out in the chat for editing this beast down.
Weaves is well-oiled after a 2 hour and 20-minute recording. So,
yeah.
All right. Be on the lookout for all of our prospect profiles. We just dropped Tet and Jaden Higgins. Tomorrow we're going to have Matthew Golden and Luther Burden. Later this week as well, we've got some Emeka Egbuka on the way. So a whole bunch of wide receivers, and we're going to get to every other position too. So thank you for watching. Leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe. We'll check in the next one. Up the Villa. See ya.
Could they go
Colston Loveland?